Volodymyr Zelensky said in his evening address yesterday that the situation at the front is difficult. Despite the very heavy Russian losses, the occupiers are still trying to advance in the Donetsk region, gain a foothold in the Lugansk region, move in the Kharkiv region. They are planning something in the south. But we are holding the line and, most importantly, we are not letting the enemy carry out his intentions, the president said. The General Staff reported in the morning that Russian attacks had been repelled in Stelmakivka, Lugansk region, as well as in Belagorovka, Bakhmutsky, Pervomaysky, Nevelski, and Mariinka, Donetsk region. The enemy offensive is on the Bakhmut and Avdiivka directions. On the Lyman direction, the enemy, who had been advancing here for several days, went on the defensive. The army of the Russian Federation is defending itself from Ugledar and in the Zaporozhye direction. For several days now, the main attention has been riveted to the southern suburbs of Bakhmut. There, Russian troops advanced, according to the American Institute for the Study of War. On footage with geolocation, published on November 29, it is clear that Russian troops were advancing towards the southeastern outskirts of Bakhmut, the organization said in a morning summary. The institute cites statements by Russian military bloggers about the capture by the enemy of Kurdiamovka and the facilities of the Seversky Donets-Donbass Canal, 13 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut, which directly affects the water supply of Gorlovka and Yasinovataya. Kurdiamovka is located south of Bakhmut and occupies heights that allow Russian artillery to strike at neighboring Chasov Yar and Konstantinovka. The institute does not comment on the veracity of these data. And he only disputes statements that Russian troops broke through the defenses in the area of Chasov Yar, on the Bakhmut-Konstantinovka highway. American experts consider the latest episode unconfirmed. By the way, the leading Russian military telegram channels did not report this, declaring only the capture of Kurdiamovka, Andriivka and Nozaryanovka. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation also announced the capture of Andriivka. If this information is true, then the Russians will have the opportunity not only to inflict fire damage along the Bakhmut-Konstantinovka highway and move in its direction, but also to attack further south, along Toretsk and New York near Gorlovka. However, not everything is so clear with Kurdiamovka. This morning, some Russian military bloggers said that the armed forces of Ukraine still control half of the settlement. Also, according to the morning statements of the head of the DPR, Pushilin, a cleansing operation is underway in the village. At the same time, the mayor of Gorlovka, Ivan Prokotko, also said in the morning that Kurdiamovka had already been completely captured. By evening, Russian sources said that fighting was continuing on the outskirts of the village. This settlement was not mentioned in the reports of the Ukrainian General Staff, and Kiev does not confirm its capture. But in general, according to the comments from Bankova, it is clear that the situation there is difficult for the armed forces of Ukraine. Arestovich says that the ratio of artillery in this sector is 1:9 in favor of the Russian army. In general, the intensity of the fighting there is very high and both sides are suffering serious losses, judging by the videos that are published from the front line. Telegram channels are already comparing Bakhmut with Verdun, one of the bloodiest battles of the First World War. When the Germans stormed this fortress for many months, trying to exhaust the enemy's forces, the Germans never took Verdun itself. Many associate the increased pressure of the Russian Federation in the Donbass not only with the transfer of released forces from near Kherson, but also with the arrival of an increasing number of mobilized. Russia announced today that all 300,000 reservists recruited under partial mobilization have already been trained. According to Defense Minister Shoigu, for 2 months they were trained at 100 training grounds of the Russian Federation and Belarus with the involvement of 3,000 instructors. More than 8,000 crews of tanks and armored vehicles, crews of artillery, air defense, drones and electronic warfare have been trained at the training centers, Shoigu said. And, apparently, now they will be sent to Ukraine. At the same time, hostilities are apparently taking place on Russian territory itself. Today, 70 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, in the Bryansk region, an oil tank exploded. Russian media write that it could be a drop of ammunition from a drone, but no one has officially confirmed this. Today, a lot of noise has been made by the statement of the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, about the losses of the Ukrainian army. In the morning, a video appeared on her Twitter, where the official says that in the war in Ukraine, more than 20,000 civilians and 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers were killed. Von der Leyen stated this in the context of the damage that Russia inflicted on Ukraine. Note that Ukraine has not officially confirmed this level of losses. On August 22, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Zaluzny stated that the losses of the Armed Forces of Ukraine were about 9,000 people. At the same time, this is not the first time that less rosy assessments have been heard from the West. Earlier, the head of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said recently that both the armed forces of Ukraine and the Russian army lost more than 100,000 military each. At the same time, he clarified that this figure includes both the dead and the wounded. Later, from Ursula von der Leyen's Twitter account, this video is gone. Then the video was re-uploaded and the part about the military losses of Ukraine was cut off. After that, the director of political communications of the EC, Dana Spinant, said that the data announced was inaccurate, since the figure of 100,000 includes the wounded. More than $1 trillion is needed to restore Ukraine after the war. This was stated yesterday by Volodymyr Zelensky, presenting Odessa's bid to host Expo 2030. But the European Commission has somewhat different estimates of damage to Ukraine from the war, 600 billion. This figure was called by the head of the EC, Ursula von der Leyen. She recalled that until recently the damage was estimated at 385 billion. According to her, the EU will do everything possible to ensure that Russia pays for the destruction caused by the frozen assets of Russian oligarchs and the central bank.